actions.
She went from being a very confident little girl to being an anxious child, very, very scared to make a mistake. She'd try really hard not to make mistakes, and then when she did, she'd almost crawl inside herself.
Jack decided.
Up to 10% of children and adults have dyslexia. That's where you have trouble reading, writing and understanding the written word. It's got nothing to do with intelligence, but it can cause stress, anxiety, depression and underachievement at school and work.
You know, there were lots of tears and lots of comparing herself to other children, which just meant that she was seeing herself in a negative light the whole time. And in year one, her teacher turned around and said to me that she didn't know how to read, that she couldn't read. And it was ridiculous because she was reading, but she wasn't always reading accurately. So she'd substitute a lot of words. It often made sense, but then it got worse. The bigger the words got, the more she substituted words, and then it didn't start to make sense.
International research has been looking for the cause of dyslexia for many years. But recently, a study at the world-famous Karolinska Institute in Stockholm has come closer to understanding what may be going wrong.
We know that dyslexia is more common in families than in general population. And then we know that there is a big genetic component in dyslexia.
So this is something you're born with rather than you acquire during early life?
Well, it is estimated that around 75% of the dyslexia is in our genes. There is also environmental factors, but we haven't identified those yet.
To feel that your child is floundering is really, really difficult at the best of times. And I have a lot of knowledge because I'm a teacher, and that made it even worse. So for me as a parent, with the knowledge that I had, I couldn't help her, and then to see her so upset and just keep saying, it's okay, it'll be okay, but not offering her anything, and she kept asking me how. So I felt like a failure as a parent, and I felt totally and utterly helpless.
So we are studying and trying to identify and studying the function of the dyslexia genes.
Genes?
Yes. So there are 14 susceptibility genes for dyslexia.
That's quite a few genes. The question is, are they all really related to dyslexia? And if they are, what could they be doing to the brain to produce this very specific abnormality when it comes to reading, writing, and understanding the written word?
When I read, the words would mix around and it'd be blurry, and I'd get words confused, like I'd mix words around. I actually didn't know I was having trouble. I thought it was normal. I thought everyone had it.
Well, the researchers at the Karolinska Institute took the first gene ever discovered in dyslexia to investigate its role in the developing brain. You see, one of the key problems in dyslexia is that in fetal life, when the brain is developing, the nerve cells don't reach the right address. It's called neuronal migration.
We culture cells in dishes, so very far from the brain, but very good model to us because it's easy to use, very ethical to use. So, and then we take these genes and then we can modify the levels of these genes and see what happens in the cell. So we find effects on a set of genes that are all connected to neural migration.
Well, that's all very well, but if you've got dyslexia or your child has, what does this mean? Well, at the very least, it does help to relieve the stigma of the condition.
What we can show is that there is a biology behind dyslexia, that this is before previously, maybe, I don't know, 20, 30 years ago, or it has been, people couldn't recognize dyslexia as a biological problem. And then maybe these children...
So they thought the children were misbehaving or just not learning properly?
They were not working hard enough to learn to read properly, and that could have deep social consequences.
I felt really stupid to ask questions, and if I asked the teacher a question and then I'd ask again, because they'd explain it and then I wouldn't understand what they said. So I'd wait a few minutes before I asked the same question again, because otherwise I felt that the teacher would just think, oh, I've just told you, why can't you just understand? And I'd come home tired every day, I'd be upset because I couldn't read like everyone else.
She needs a minimum of 12 hours sleep. She's exhausted every day.
But today we know, these kids could be identified in the school, and then they, if with proper help, they can reach very far. I mean, they have normal IQs.
I find it difficult to keep up with the students in my class because they'd write this whole big thing and then I'd still be like halfway and they've just moved on to another thing. So I'd just have to catch up with everything. Then I'd get homework, which was that day's classwork, and then it just load up.
Not only left behind, but completely overwhelmed. Some nights she'd have 5-6 hours of homework, which would include that classwork that she hadn't completed.
So I think it's mostly can help with the diagnosis and understanding of the dyslexia rather than trying to cure it directly. Of course, if the children are diagnosed earlier, they can get proper help and then they won't be left behind in the first years of school.
Lunch, that helps. Okay, go downstairs.
I enjoy English, sport. I'm very sporty. I like dancing, singing, acting. Oh yes, I like designing stuff like tech and art. I'm very creative.